yours truly, Jack the Nipper. It's Our Sinclair, episode 82. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Our Sinclair. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today, Aaron, we're going to be talking about Jack the Nipper.
Oh.
Looks like you've already had a little nip yourself.
Well, a little bit of a little nip. To get through Jack the Nipper, I had to take a few.
Now, before we start, Aaron, we want to give a special shout out to our Clives Club members, Paul, a.k.a. Hermsky, Richard Goulstone, Paul Harrington, McChessers, Jed Byrne, Justin Tinpot Gamer, Orkmeal, and you, possibly in the future. Patreon.com/Our Sinclair. Now, Aaron, when it comes to your garden variety pseudo-mythical serial killer, who's your favorite?
Do you think he's pseudo? You talking about Jack the Ripper as being pseudo?
Pseudo-mythical. We don't know if he was one person.
Oh, I
he
see.
was multiple people.
I see what you mean. I like, there's a guy, it's the same sort of era, actually. There's a guy called Spring Hill Jack.
Okay.
You ever heard of him?
No. Was he saucy?
He was saucy. He would bounce around town, and just before they got him, he'd go like, burn, and he could shoot up in the air. That's why they called him Spring Hill Jack.
I like it.
And he haunted the area. I don't think he actually killed anybody.
He was in London.
I think he was, yeah. Somewhere in Britain there at the time. But he would. But
you never
like
get those guys around here. You never get anybody in Big Chimney.
Nope. Spring Hill Cletus.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine? I like the idea of someone having like boingy shoes.
Yeah.
You ever seen those shoes that have the springs built into them?
Why not?
Do those things work?
No, because the amount of pressure that you need to apply to one of those springs to get you off the air would be so immense that it would just kill you immediately. They would go up through your body and out through your head.
Really?
Yeah.
It's like you looked into this.
I've done research.
I mean, what could you put on your body that would make you jump real high?
Well, you can do the moon shoes.
Okay, what are those?
Moon shoes are like platform shoes that have little trampolines on them. You can get a good 5 or 6 inches.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, you can add.
Where are the trampolines? Under your feet?
Yeah, they're in the shoe, and the shoe is like it's almost like a snowshoe.
Yeah.
Okay, it's wider than your normal shoe.
Yeah.
And you get, and then you boom.
Really?
One of those.
You ever worn those?
Yes.
Did it work?
Well, I mean, my vert is typically 1 to 2 inches.
The vert, yeah.
So this added, I would say it added probably a good 50% to my vert.
Now, because in video games, guys have these tremendous leaps.
Yeah.
In real life, humans can't do any of that stuff. Even the finest long jumper couldn't do so. Video games, guys.
Especially when you consider like the long jumpers take like a 50-yard sprint to do their jump.
Like, if you think about this game, before we get into it, but the baby, he's got a pretty good vert.
Mm-hmm.
And that's depressing when you're me. There's a kid who's still in diapers. He's got like a 3-foot vertical leap.
Did you ever entertain fantasies about dunking a basketball?
I did. God knows I tried. Then I would jump off stuff to simulate it. But really, what are you doing there?
I was a big fan of jumping off my dad's car.
Oh, my God.
He was not a big fan of me jumping off his car.
Did you ever leave footprints and stuff
I put a dent in his roof. So that wasn't.
Oh man, I bet you got murdered.
It wasn't a happy day.
Did you play basketball when you were a kid?
Oh, I mean, just for fun. I never played on a team or anything.
You never actually had. Did you do anything athletic?
Yeah, I played baseball all the way up until high school.
Really? Why did you quit?
Because 2 reasons. 1, because I was no good, and 2.
That's a good reason.
And 2, because it literally interfered with being in the marching band. You couldn't.
Wow, man. So you were at a crossroads.
Yeah.
Accepted athletic participant.
Well,
geek.
Listen,
geek.
and no one will understand this better than you.
Yeah.
I came out of the Hurricane Baseball League.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I went to a little league we like to call Babe Ruth over at the wave pool park.
You got cream.
There's a vast chasm of ability.
Yeah.
that must be crossed.
Bench warming much.
Oh yeah. I rode the pine like the best of them the 1 year I did it. So that was the end.
There you go.
I don't know how we've gotten here, Aaron.
Baseball, right?
Let's leave it. Jack the Nipper.
Jack the Nipper. I'm sure you'd heard of this one, Bode.
Yes.
This may be amongst our collection in here.
I think we do. I think we've got this one.
So Jack the Nipper, released for the ZX Spectrum 48K version in the year of our Lord, 1986. September, I have read, but your mileage may vary.
That's probably when it was reviewed in the mag.
Yeah. Well, the release date was I saw a couple places September '86. So your mileage may vary. This was a 7-pound 95p release, pretty cheap, of course. The usual suspects on that. Published by Gremlin and developed by Gremlin-ish. So we'll get into that. Just to refresh everyone's memory on what Gremlin did on the ZX. They did a couple things we've already looked at, Bo, including Deflector. Remember Deflector?
Mm-hmm.
They did Gauntlet, Hate. Remember Hate?
Yeah, you and Brent did that one.
They did Footballer of the Year series. They did a bunch of Gauntlet games. They did a lot of stuff. This game was written by a fellow named Greg Holmes. Greg Holmes was an interesting cat. I saw a little interview with him. Like, he was basically like, I believe he was working like on the docks or something. And he wanted to get into computers, and he went out and got himself a ZX Spectrum, right around 80, 81, early on, and learned how to program like on that machine with the specific purpose of actually getting into like doing games and stuff.
Have you ever known anyone that's worked down at the docks?
No, I never have.
I know one.
We don't
guy.
live anywhere near the ocean. That's probably why.
So I went to OU, so you got the Ohio contingent, the up north, and I know a guy that works the docks up in Sandusky area. Okay.
Yeah.
In undergrad, he was an organ. He was an organ major.
Really?
Okay. Yeah. He was an organ
Very
performance
impressive.
major. Then he became a tractor repairman.
Oh man.
He also has the lowest voice I've ever heard in my life. He sang ultra bass in the choir.
Oh.
Yeah. And now he works the docks up in Sandusky.
You have to be a real stud.
He's a bad dude.
Old school like swarthy gent to work the docks.
He's got the personality for it.
And who knows if Greg Holmes developed this, because it was early days for him. But anyway, he got this, and he started working on some games. And this was not his first game. He worked on a game called Coil Cop. He went on to do some other stuff, Jack the Ripper 2, Advita Zane Monty, Avenger, some other stuff. But he worked on a series of 3 games, and the third game he worked on was Jack the Nipper, and he actually talked about going up to Gremlin to pick the brains of some of the geniuses that were working there to kind of give him some help on the game. And he said that they didn't reveal all their secrets to him, but they would tell him enough to where he could figure out these various techniques and tricks to get the ZX Spectrum to do what he wanted. And so, which I think that's kind of neat. That's sort of the way I think of development how it should work, really. You know, they've got your individual coder, but they go in, people help them out. I think that's kind of neat. The music on this is credited to a guy named Nick Law. That's a joke name that Greg used. Apparently, that was a nickname for a guy named Nick Coran who worked there at Gremlin and did the music for it. The art was done by I think it was his brother John, who also worked on Potter and A Trick of the Tail. And the load screen was done by a guy named Peter Harrap. This guy's got a Harrap sheet of genius here. Amongst the things he worked on were Avita Monty, Avenger, Bounder, Death Wish 3. That's right, the Charles Bronson. We're going to play that sometime. The Flintstones, a lot of stuff. So this guy got around. Jack the Nipper was also ported over to the Amstrad, the C64, the MSX. And then eventually it made its way to the iPad, the Apple family of products, and is also available on AntStream, in case you're one of the people that is subscribed to that. So what is this game, you may ask yourself? And what this is you play the role of Jack the Nipper. Jack is a little baby who has a penchant for being naughty, Bode. And his naughtiness takes many forms. Some of them, I'd say, mundane, and some of them downright murderous. This game would not fly today.
No.
There's a 0% chance you would make Jack the Nipper today. Jack moves around. I use the old joystick for this. But you also have to use the keyboard. This is a game where you're required to use keyboard controls because you're going to need to hit enter to open doors. You're going to have to hit the 1 and 2 button to manipulate Jack the Nipper's inventory of goodies. You start off in your nursery, and the first thing you need to do is go and get your your straw so you can shoot spit wads at people. And so that's when you're going to get comfortable with the way the game works in terms of how Jack moves. Jack can jump. Jack's not what I would call a speed demon, Boat.
He moves at the same. Well, actually, for a baby, he moves pretty quick.
He moves good for a baby. I'll grant you that. But he's not what I would call a super duper speedy kid. And everyone in this game sort of plods along, if I'm honest. Before we get too far into this, Boat, the concept of playing a child, a baby, Me and Brent did an ARG on this very premise a couple months ago. In fact, this was on our radar even back then, but I would have played this. I figured we might cover it, and we did. What do you think about the idea of playing as a baby? Does it appeal to you in games?
I hate it.
Really?
Hate it.
That's why I ask. Why do you hate it so much?
Because one of two things is going to happen.
Yeah.
Okay. One, the baby is going to be so cute and so lovable that it's going to cause you pain to bring harm to the baby. And you know, in a game like this, there's going to be a lot of harm done.
Right.
Or two, the baby is going to be so repulsive looking, like all those Amiga baby games, that you're going to want to wish harm on the baby, and that makes you feel guilty.
Which Amiga games are you referring to, Bode?
Oh, all of them. Son of Chuck.
Son of Chuck, he's kind of cute. I didn't think he was that ugly. BC Kid, he's not that bad looking.
No, BC Kid, well, that's not really an Amiga game. But the game that you picked on the baby games episode, I can't think of it right now.
That was a pretty good game. I don't even remember it
either.
But
the baby looked awful.
Yeah, he was rough. This baby looks fairly baby-like. He's little and bald. He's in a onesie.
The baby and Gregory loses his clock. I hated that baby.
Man, you just don't like babies, is what you're saying.
But I'm just saying.
What do you think of the controls in this?
The controls are fine. This is if you can imagine an adventure game set in the world of Double Dragon, that's what Jack the Nipper is.
Not just the world, not the actual the bad guys are involved.
The bad guys are Adobo or whatever his name is not in this game. But you're moving about a sort of 3D space where you can move up, down, left, and right, and you're collecting items. You have an inventory of 2 slots. And your job is to solve puzzles by bringing items to certain locations, which trigger events. To raise heck, Aaron, you've got a little spitwad thrower.
I think they said it was a pea shooter.
A pea shooter.
That's not really. You don't get a lot of pea shooting here in the States.
I think that had mostly died out around the 40s.
I think my dad probably did that sort of thing.
Yeah. And so, but you basically roam about this pretty large world.
Yeah, it is. It's a 50 different screens boat on this game, which that is impressive.
And they comprise a kind of a fully fleshed out city. You have a storefront where you can go into various types of retail establishments. There's a laundromat. There's a pharmacist, a computer shop.
Then there's a software store, police station.
Right. And then there's also a pastoral setting where you're walking around the fields. You go to sort of a rural cabin. So there's lots of different places to explore in this game. So if you're looking at this game from the standpoint of graphics, aside from this being presented in glorious Spectrum monocolor, the graphics are quite serviceable.
I actually think they're great. Yeah. I'll be honest with you. I think the caricatures that they made, the townsfolk look great. You can tell what everything is. I know how much you love the names of places to be on top. So all the businesses in this are named, which is great. You could go into all the doors, which is great. There's also sometimes just go through gaps in the wall. It's a whole other area, which is great. The graveyards, the fields, they did a great job. I think this is a real impressive game with a lot going on visually. Now, like Boat said, the object of this game is just to go out and raise hell, basically. On the bottom of the screen, this is one of your patented, 2/3 of the screen's devoted to all sorts of stuff. Although you sort of need it in this, I guess.
I'd say it's about 40%.
I'm going to give a pass because there's a lot to keep track of on this. The bottom part of the screen, you've got your number of Jack the Nippers remaining. You get 5. You've got your rash meter. Think hit points. I think this is clever. The more contact you come into with other people, the more the rash meter will go up. And if it goes all the way to the top, that Jack is out. He's been rashed out, basically. You got to go to the next one. I think that's a cute one because no one wants to kill babies.
Right.
And no one in this game does anything aggressive toward Jack the Nipper. They just basically walk over him.
Yeah, this is one of these games where anything you come into contact with that's moving is your enemy.
Yeah. Now, so we like the way things look. We like the characters, the way they look. The way the game, I guess, is a lot of it's just avoiding stuff. And people, if you ever played Blood Money and you think, how do those aliens just randomly move around? That's the way these people move. They just walk back and forth on the screen. like mindless idiots until you shoot them with your pea shooter. And
they have this vacant look in their eyes.
Yeah,
they're all
happy.
smiling.
Yeah.
It's like you're living in one of those like self-contained dementia villages.
Yeah. I don't know what it's like. I've never heard of a self-contained dementia.
Oh yeah, they're popular in Scandinavia.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I'm never going there. But Jack exists in some weird zones here. You can see why he wants to hurt these people. Because
he doesn't really want to hurt them.
What do you mean? You shoot them. You poison them.
Well,
you drop stuff on them.
Okay, maybe he does.
Yeah, he's not a good boy. Now, early in the game when I got my pea shooter, I was shooting suckers, and because these guys the people in this town don't exactly move fast either.
No,
there's a lot of Jackie Joyner cursies here, but when they randomly roll around until you hurt them, and then they come at you, bro, hard and heavy. They still walk the same speed, but they come directly to you. But you can reel off 2 or 3 shots before they get anywhere near you. Now, the shots don't hurt them. I mean, in terms of killing them. But what it does is you basically piss them off. But the first few of those you shoot, you get some naughty points. And I thought, man, I'm going to max this naughty meter out quick. I'm just going to take this pea shooter, go around town, and shoot suckers in the butt. Well, that's not the way it works. There's a cap on just shooting people, how much your naughty meter will go up. Other things you've got to do in the game to increase your naughty meter is, like Boat said, there are various things you pick up in the game. There's glue, there's batteries. And once you pick up an item, you need to go find a place to put it to where your naughty meter will go up. This is part of the game that I didn't really quite. I mean, maybe it's just trial and error, that sort of thing. Well, but I didn't quite understand exactly how you find where you're supposed to put this.
Here's the problem: when you have a game like this, you need to. Well, okay, let's back up because I feel like we need to give this stipulation a lot. Okay, if this was the only game that you had, and you had an infinite amount of time to work on it, okay, this game is solvable.
Yeah.
Okay. They don't make it explicit what items you can interact with in this game. So you basically have to touch everything and attempt to pick it up.
And explain how you pick stuff up.
You hit 1 or 2
Correct.
on the keyboard. Okay, which I like. I think that's fine.
I mean, if you don't mind touching the keyboard when you're playing with your joystick.
And a lot of people were playing this on the keyboard.
Yeah. So, in fact, I'd say the majority.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then when you get to the scene where you have to do something with it, you just drop it. Okay. And you hope that it's the right thing to do. If it's not the right thing to do, that item will frequently disappear.
That's a problem.
Yeah, and go back, and you have to retrieve it. And it's not easy to retrieve some of these items. That's where the platforming section of the game comes in, where you oftentimes have to make pixel-perfect jumps to get across to the areas in these rooms where these items are hidden. So, now, here's what I picture. I picture a lad of 7 or 8 taking this home, and he's got his notebook next to him. Or she's got her notebook. We'll use a lady. There are lady Spectrum gamers. And she's got her notebook, and she makes careful notes of the locations of every room. She maps out all 50 screens.
Yeah.
Then she goes into each room, and she maps out the location of all the items. And then gradually, she works through the puzzles and solves the game. And she gets a great sense of accomplishment from that.
Yeah.
Okay? This is how people played games back then.
Yeah.
You know? Now, how does that translate to 2023 or 2022? Not very well in my case, because I need to have a little bit more assistance. I'm not asking for you to solve the game for me.
I am.
What I would like to see is the items that you can interact with be highlighted in a different color. That way you don't waste your time trying to negotiate yourself in these platforms to pick up an item that you can't pick up.
Yeah.
2, I would like to see a list of items somewhere, either in the docks or on a separate screen, that actually tells you what the item is. Like, this is a pen, this is a jar of poison. Because sometimes you can tell, like the poison, it's got the skull and crossbones on it. But there are some things in this game you just don't know what they are. They're too abstract looking. And 3, you've got to not make the item disappear when it doesn't work to solve the puzzle. Just let you set it down, and then nothing happens, you can pick it back up.
I assume they did that to artificially extend the gameplay.
Absolutely.
And the funny thing is, if we had a list here of all the items and all the places you put the items, all right, that wouldn't be that tough. You could go get the stuff. You could get it. So really, the run-of-the-mill gameplay of this game isn't the game. It is the puzzle. The rest of it's just avoiding people. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. you occasionally could get someone on you, and you just can't get them off of you, and you die.
Well, that happens all the time. So if you're ever going to use the pea shooter, what you have to do is be at least 50% of the screen away from the person and leave the screen before they find you. Because once they get you,
they blanket you.
Yeah, you can't. There's no getting away from them unless you can get out of the screen.
And which I thought was odd. And I tried jumping and acting crazy, and nothing helped. So there may be a technique that was involved in escaping. But like Boat said, if you're going to shoot a sucker, you absolutely don't want to shoot him when he's near you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you want to make sure you get out of the way. Plus, occasionally some other stuff will hurt baby.
Now, here's what else I would have liked.
Yeah.
Okay, populating this game, you have grown-ups, you have animals, and you have ghosts.
And there's also some weird
and there's aliens.
Like I'm assuming, there's also like bugs or something.
Yeah, I always thought about them as aliens. What I would have liked is, of course, the grown-ups are your enemy because you're a baby. Yeah. I would have liked to have seen the animals be able to assist in your naughtiness somehow. Like maybe when you shoot a dog with the pea shooter, it runs amok. It goes mad with power, and it bites the backside of one of the grown-ups, and your naughty meter goes up.
Hey, that's not bad actually, Bo.
Ghosts are the only thing that can be killed by your pea shooter.
Yeah, in terms of the control of the baby, like you mentioned that there were pixel perfect jumps, which there are tons and tons of these, which is it's your classic Spectrum jumping game where you have to
classic Spectrum jumping experience.
Well, I mean, you all even in the very first screen to get to the pea shooter, you have to make some pixel perfect leaps.
Yeah,
and that means going out to where you're like in real life, you can never balance on the last pixel you need to make these jumps.
Right.
Well, now we've been playing Spectre stuff for a while now. I mean, what do you think? What's the scoop on that? Does it bother you, or is it something are you used to it by now?
I'm used to it.
But honestly. I mean, it seems so dumb.
Why
do they make the games to be like that?
Again, they were trying to make the game difficult. Spectrum developers, by and large, were terrified of making their games too easy.
Oh well.
They were terrified because what would happen is if a reviewer took it home and managed to beat it, that would be the first line. Too easy. Not worth your hard-earned cash.
You think?
Yeah.
Well, this one's not going to fall into that category. That's for darn
Because
sure.
Think about it. Have we ever played a Spectrum game that was easy?
Even some that people loved, I couldn't play.
Right.
They made them tough.
Yeah.
I mean, but of course, you got a different sort of people were playing them back then. And you're right. Going home, taking notes.
Mm-hmm.
Mapping out the rooms and stuff, or getting a magazine where they did that, which would be a great thing for the magazines to do. It makes sense.
Exactly, and I think that had a lot to do with it too. I think that there was most likely, this is unsubstantiated, but I believe that these companies would go over and they'd say, "Hey, Crash, we're getting ready to release this game. If you give us a favorable review, we'll give you the map already. All you've got to do is print it. You'll sell 1 million magazines because everybody wants the map to Jack the Nipper."
Yeah,
winking a nudge.
It might be.
Looks as good of a horse.
Oh, I don't know what that meant.
To a blind man's uncle.
Yeah, that's why you don't have a sayings book right there.
See the wink I gave you?
No, I thought you had a twitch going on. So overall, I enjoyed the game. I like the look of it. I like the character. I like the rash meter, the 90 meter. I like that stuff. But it was let down by the puzzles. Which, to me, I couldn't figure out any rhyme or reason on how they worked. We've played a lot of these games where there are puzzle elements, and there's sort of, sometimes they'll at least give you an idea of what you're doing. This one, it just seemed arbitrary. I watched a playthrough, because I had picked up a lot of stuff I didn't know what to do with it. And there's one bit where they pick up this poison, and it looks like he just leaves it in the road. I'm like, what's going on
with
here?
The poison, what you do is you take it to the flowers. You take it to the screen with the flowers, you drop it, and all the flowers disappear.
Right, but I mean, he just drops it in the middle of the street.
Yeah.
I'm like, what happened? I don't get that.
Yeah.
And how would you know to do that, and why?
Right. Again, it just comes from lots of trial and error.
So there you go. We mentioned that this game got released on some of the other machines of the day. I grabbed hold of some video here from the C64 version. From what I could tell, the Spectre version was the premier version, and it was ported to everything else from the Specky. So what's that tell you? And looking at the N64 version here, what do you think, bud? I know you're not N64. Well, I'll tell you what, that'd be something. Look at the C64 version of this boat. Clearly, it moves at a decent clip. What do you think about the graphics and stuff? terms of the coloring and whatnot.
Well, what I suspect is that this is somebody capturing this game on an NTSC machine.
I would say you're probably right. But what do you think of that? Look at the art and whatnot. What do you think of that?
Well, it's definitely an improvement. I mean, if you're going to ask somebody, do you want to play this game in color or in one color? They're going to say in color.
I don't know. I think the characters look way better in the Spectrum version.
The characters look better.
The backgrounds look better. I think everything looks better.
You're not wrong.
Me and you. Now listen. Me and you play a lot of these games, and people are like, monochrome, but we play, and we know this from the Mac, too. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's about how you program these games, how you handle it.
Yeah.
It's not even the speed. Sometimes it's the ability.
It's how you do the dithering and all that stuff.
Look at the beautiful backgrounds and the beautiful characters. Now look at what you got over here in the C64 version. They look freakish.
Yeah.
I like it, but
yeah, I mean, I didn't look at the characters at first. I was looking more at the backgrounds, but yeah. The characters definitely lose a lot when you add the shading, and I think it's just because you have to lose a certain amount of detail to put in color. So.
Yeah, so I will say I did not play the 64 version, but I don't like the look of it.
Well, it's a C64, so you're never going to
listen. Rob Flacco Harris in here, and he might bring the pain to you. I wanted to read this earlier. I'm going to read. I looked at the instructions for something. If you looked at the instructions.
I didn't look at the instructions on this.
I did because I couldn't figure out what I was doing. So just the opening blob here, it says, "Hurry up, wimp! Get me loaded and let's have some fun."
Wow,
that's what Jack the Nipper said. I say that all the time.
When I play a baby game, that's the first thing that I think of. When I came
into the studio today, it's the first thing I told Bo. Hurry up, wimp! Get me loaded. Let's have some fun. So it says here, Jack was tired of all the wimps in his town.
Yeah, it was.
Their boring games and goody-goody ways sent him to sleep. So Jack, being a rather naughty disposition, set about livening things up a bit. He picked up his trusty pea shooter and scarpered off to cause some trouble. Scampered? I think they misspelled scampered. This is where you come in to take the role of Jack and use your imagination to be as naughty as possible. I like that, Boat. And it does have a list here of useful items. That's why I wanted to mention this. So they did include some sort of reference to help you, Boat.
So I didn't look at the docs. I was going from this, as if I acquired this game through nefarious means.
Yeah, well, there you go. And the docs also taught me how to open doors and use the keyboard, which is pivotal. So there you go. I looked at some reviews on this Boat, if you care. This thing got massive reviews. I mean, all of them put it over. Sinclair user 5 out of 5. Crashed 93 out of 100. Your Sinclair 9 out of 10. Computer Gamer 15 out of 20. Great. It won a Crash Smash. It also won awards from Your Sinclair and ZX Computing. It was very popular.
Well, in 1986, I mean, in some ways, it was kind of, I believe, to be the zenith of the popularity of the Spectrum.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it wasn't so late in the game that people were really buying a lot of 16-bit machines en masse.
Yeah.
And for people that got on board and play, I mean, it just seems like 86 is the sweet spot where you're going to have the most magazine coverage for the Specky.
I looked up how did this thing do? It did great. The game got to number 2 in the UK sales chart, trailing only behind Ghosts and Goblins. Starting in, get this is something else I found out. In 87, Your Sinclair magazine started doing a monthly comic strip based on the character. So there's a comic series based on
this
Jack.
Is a game, or this is a character that I believe would do very well in the comic strips.
Oh yeah. I mean really, and it's funny because reading an interview in Retro Gamer with Greg Holmes, he mentions that like his inspiration for this was a couple comic strips. In fact, they almost worked it out. Now I'd never heard of any of these, by the way. It's some British stuff. But they thought about working a deal out with one of the comic strips that he was basing this on, or cartoon, but they decided it wouldn't earn them any extra money and it would cost them money, and so they didn't do it. So kind of neat. If you want to add, did we get any Discord action on this?
We got a ton of Discord action.
I'm not surprised.
So Will Brooker writes, there's no doubt that this game's greatest assets are its graphics. Characters are drawn in the authentic style of the Beano's Leo Baxendale, along the lines of anti-heroes like Babyface, Finlayson, and Sweeney Toddler. Animation is simple but jolly. The sprites are smooth, and there's a convincing sense of wandering around a kid's comic. The pseudo 3D works in this context as if you're moving back and forward within a shallow space, and the flip screen gives a sense of crossing between panels. But if you take away the charming looks, what's left? The gameplay simply involves weaving along similarly monochrome streets and interiors, avoiding obstacles, and engaging in a few platform jumps to pick up an item that you then have to take to another location. The concept of the prank sounds fun. Gum up false teeth, poison a garden. That sounds fun, right? Poison a garden. Sabotage a computer store.
Yeah.
Blow up your grandmother's car. Oh, he didn't put that in there, but I wouldn't be surprised. But it all comes down to exactly the same technique.
Wait a minute. You made that part up and just added it?
I just added
Why?
it. Why? Jack the Nipper is graduating into...
You just clicked up your naughty meter, Bo.
Yeah. So you pick up an item from one corner, weave along the streets until you find the target location, drop the item, move to the next. There is no combat to break up these fetch and drop missions. The pea shooter is sluggish, controls are not especially responsive, and enemies tend to stick to you, following you until your energy is sapped. Great set dressing around a repetitive game mechanic. It's interesting to compare this to Herbert's Dummy Run, another game about a baby from the same time, and to note that in sequels, 3 Weeks in Paradise and Coconut Capers, both babies went on tropical vacation. An example of ZX Spectrum synchronicity.
Oh man, I hope he didn't sing that.
Jed Byrne writes, Jack the Nipper looks as good as I remember, but I'd forgotten how badly it plays. I think Pete Cooked summed it up in Crash 42. This looks nice, very pretty. And then I saw it moving and they all move in diagonals and I thought, oh no, why? It's a trivial thing to have a lookup table in a shallow diagonal, so it looks realistic rather than bouncing off walls. Unfortunately, the great work done by the designers is constantly undermined by lazy programming. The attract screen is cute, with the menu being replaced by Jack cheekily urging you to get a move on. Yeah. But when you try to start a game, you cannot.
Yeah.
You have to wait for the menu to come back first. The puzzles are fun and mischievous, but there's no way of knowing what can and can't be picked up. On the first screen, there are 3 toys on the shelf, but only the pea shooter can be picked up. You have to grind through each screen, standing next to everything and seeing if it will pick up. The map is varied with lots of locations, but each location has the same annoying characters bouncing around. Some you can clear out of the way with a pea shooter, but using your weapon on others will have them follow you around the screen, causing repeated deaths. A couple weeks of playtesting could have turned this into a great game. Instead, we have a game with great first impressions followed by lasting frustration. Such a shame. Flat Duck Records writes, I can imagine a big appeal of this game was swapping hints and tips in the playground and excitedly trying out when you got them home to your Spectrum in the evening. Telling apart the made-up pranks your pal Colin tried to convince you were really in the game was probably part of the fun. No doubt sold many magazines with hint supplements too. There you go.
There you go.
It's definitely a controller game, and in particular a pad rather than a joystick, I reckon. And yet you still need the keyboard to interact with things. The default movement keys are awful. Maybe it's meant to evoke a toddler's erratic shambling about, but I found it annoying and clumsy. I'd like to have been able to pick up more stuff even if it's not part of a puzzle. The ability to push things off shelves would be fun. Lots more chaos. The sprites and animations are all there already, and the animals and whatnot should be on your side. Take them into a shop and let them loose. What there is fun, but it could have been more. The nappy rash thing is amusing, but I think it could have been a more interesting game mechanic. Instead of lives, it could have been a time limit forcing you to return home for a nappy change, rather than it acting like a health bar and implying strangers in the street are smacking children. Even if it was the 80s.
Whoop. What was going on over there?
And as for the strangers, I think there could have been more risk-reward gameplay. They should leave you alone until they catch you being naughty. Maybe a simple line-of-sight thing could have been done on a Spectrum for a bit of sneaky stealth. Anyway, once caught, you would be ejected from the premises, forfeiting any additional points or items that you didn't already collect. I'd also quite like the shopkeepers to frown once they are annoyed with you. That certainly would have made 8-year-old me laugh. And finally, Jigglebox writes, a jaunty tune and colorful menu screen kicks things off nicely. If you hang about, though, Jack wanders out, gives you a whistle, and taunts you to play.
Yeah.
From then on, it's a case of finding objects, avoiding bumping into other characters, and being naughty with the objects you find. I found the game somewhat engaging with some nice graphics, albeit monochrome. However, there are many other games I'd rather spend time with. 6 out of 10 from a weedy wimp.
You know, I will say the opening thing is funny, and that little whistle was pretty impressive. Apparently, it was quite a technical feat pull that off. The viewer feedback really brought up a lot of good ideas for like games that could have been different. Again, you got to consider this was early in this dude's career, Holmes' career, and so for an early effort, I think this is great. Yes, he's got the bones of something awesome here. I would have gotten rid of the random moving of stuff around and either made this a straight up adventure game with like where you go out and do stuff, or a straight up action game. He tried to sort of do both.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I would have done. I would have left everything as is.
Yeah.
And I would have, when you hit somebody with a pea shooter, I would have not made them come after you unless they directly saw you. And that's the way that I think somebody mentioned that. But I think with you would not have to totally rehaul or redesign this game to make it better.
Yeah.
There's just a couple slight changes you can make. And it really would be. This is a unique game. We've not played an adventure game that have these elements combined before.
This is the baby that would go on to go to school in school days.
Mm-hmm.
He moved on.
Yeah.
After this, he went and he kept being a jerk.
Right.
Right on out the door.
He kept the pea shooter. That's for sure.
So it's that is amusing. I also want to mention before we close it up, when you lose in this, Jack gives you a rating based on how naughty you were, and it ranges from goody on. I think I got like, do you recall the most naughty you were able to be able to get in this?
Right bastard?
Was that wow?
No, probably not.
You just made that up, didn't you? You wanted to cuss on the air. I looked this up on the eBay boat. If you're interested in picking this up, there's plenty available. I saw people selling them from $8 all the way to $40. This thing was also included all sorts of collections, whatnot. So if you want a copy, it shouldn't be too tough to pick one up if you're in the UK. As per usual, if you're in the States, you're boned, boat. You are boned. That's all we got, my friend.
Well, we want to thank Clive's Club member Jed Byrne for picking this show, for nominating this, and of course all of Clive's Club for voting on it. Yeah. Great choice. It's now time, Aaron, to reveal next month's title.
Man, let's see what we got. Bam! It's Firefly.
Firefly.
One of my favorite shows. Has now come home to the ZX Spectrum.
Do you think that there's anything related to the show in this game?
Well, I would wager this predates Firefly by several decades, so I would say no.
Okay. Well, this was picked by Justin Tin Pot Gamer, nominated, and
thank you.
Of
well
course,
done.
Voted on by Clive's Club. Speaking of Clive's Club and our supporting the show, we have a goal, Aaron, and that goal is getting ever closer to being met. Right now, Our Sinclair is a monthly endeavor, but if we get $200 of support on Patreon, this show will morph into a weekly show. Spectrum every week.
You see my morph animation? That's what it's me morphing.
Was that because there was an Amiga program that did basically
I used
the same
that.
thing.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day, I couldn't believe how cool that was.
Well, you didn't need to use it. You just recreated it yourself.
Morphing was a big deal in like the late 80s, early 90s. Like that was a huge.
Did you ever morph yourself into something?
Oh, tons. Zombies, balls, whatever you get hold of. It was cool. And I love morphing.
We want to thank all of our Sinclair supporters, Wanderly Chesum, Chartel, Jigglebox, David Terrace, Andrew Waite, Eric Nelson, Captain Crispy, Laurent Giroux, Mark Downey, Peter Mulholland, Chris Fools, Gary Heather, Mark Durham, Mitsuyama, and Pixels at Dawn. Thank you guys so much for supporting Our Sinclair. We will see you next time for Firefly, and until then, rewind tape
and press play.